WOCA.
Ocala.
All right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. If you have been waiting to speak to John Fuller about your legal circumstances, or maybe the legal circumstances of somebody you know, this is the time to call. Today is Wednesday, April 16th, 2014. If on your calendar you show it's the same date, then you're listening to a live broadcast. John Fuller is an attorney here in Ocala at the law firm of Fuller and Fuller. The other Fuller is his beautiful wife, Janet. We don't see Janet anymore. We used to see her at least once or twice. She doesn't come in anymore. The show is called Legally Yours, and your connection to John right now is the WOCA Climate Control Source Hotline, which is 622-9622-622-WOCA. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Larry. Good morning to our listeners. Yes, I wish Janet would come in. Most of her clients she schedules for Wednesday in our office in the Villages. That just seems to have worked out to be a convenient time for her other hearings and schedules. So I keep after her because she is the expert in our law firm on Social Security disability law. She handles that, and it's an area of the law that is very unique, one of which I do not know anything about. So I'm still trying, and one of these days we're going to have a program that will be dedicated to answering Social Security disability questions, and we'll draft Janet to come in.
We had Captain Lazenby from the Villages Public Safety, I think it was, and he was talking about the possibility that our trauma center could be taken away here in Ocala. So if, for example, it was, and if, for example, somebody from the Villages died because they had to be transported a longer distance, either to Gainesville or to Orlando, would that be something somebody could sue over?
Who would you sue?
Okay, so that would be your first question if I came to you and said I want to sue somebody.
Governmental entities are immune.
Oh, really?
With exceptions, obviously, but generally speaking, if you are performing a governmental function of making a governmental decision, that's not something that the government would be sued or suable over. I think it would be very problematical because depending upon where the injury, accident, illness occurred, they've done some statistical analysis, and there's litigation pending on that issue right now. I don't have anything to do with it, don't know anything about it, but I think there's been some testimony or at least some information that the average time to transport by medevac from Ocala to Shands in Gainesville is X amount of minutes, and it's a very small period of time, as opposed to a trauma center here, and there has been statistically little or no difference in the mortality or morbidity rate of patients who have been transported versus patients who have not been transported. That's the argument. Not my case, not my argument.
Oh, really?
Know nothing about it, but you would have to prove what is called in the law that there was a causal relationship, proximate causation, you hear it called, a nexus, that in the event there was some party who was not immune, where there was some potential claim that arose out of negligence or whatever, then you would have to prove that that was the cause of the death or complication or whatever, that instead of taking 14 minutes from injury to trauma center, it took 21 minutes or vice versa or whatever.
Yeah, and I don't want to argue that, but you demonstrated an interesting thing right there, because I was bringing something up and your first question was, who would you sue? And you stopped me short in my tracks because I wouldn't know who to sue. So does that happen a lot where somebody comes to you?
And it's easy, and it's not just that I was so intuitive and did it. It's just I've been around a lot.
You've done it.
And I have had cases where I have been caught up in the cause of action, the damages, the this, the that, and the other, and then you back up and you say, wait a minute. I have to have some ability to find a responsible party, over which a court has jurisdiction and which I have standing and or privity, which are all legal terms. But without some of these things, you can't get in the courthouse door. So, it all becomes academic. So, yeah, that's
so some people think they have a case, come to you, and you basically educate them.
Well, sure. There is not, and this is a fallacy that a lot of people have, our society and our legal system does not give a remedy for every conceivable grievance that one has by living in a complex, complicated society.
The phone line is open, and I encourage you, if you have a question, to call now rather than waiting toward the end. And I know we have a tendency to do that, waiting for the first person to call so that you're not the first person.
Yeah. We'll be glad if someone calls. Yeah. We'll immediately quit talking. But, we were chatting just before we went on the air, and this is something that I think is important. I've been working with several cases with people who had hip replacement surgery a number of years ago and received an artificial hip prosthesis, and those by a number of different companies have failed. And there's litigation, multi-district litigation all over the country, of which I have several clients that are involved in it. And it's a very serious matter, and many people may have received hip replacement surgery or joint replacement surgery of any kind, but hip is primarily the one that has been the most prominent in terms of failure and resulting damages, because they have to go back in and they have to remove the old prosthesis that has either moved, shifted, eroded, caused fracture, infection, or it has rubbed metal on metal so that the metal has gotten absorbed into the person's body and caused bad results from metal toxicity. And there are a lot of people who may or may not know that they have those things. They may think, well, I've had hip surgery and I've just got to live with the pain. And that may or may not be true, but we've had several cases where people had to go back in, have them replaced, major surgery, substantial damages, and those cases are pending throughout the country. And if a person has had that surgery and is having problems, I wish they would check with their doctor, get the appropriate tests, follow up with X-rays, MRIs, CT scan, blood tests, whatever the doctor thinks appropriate, to find out whether or not they may be having unanticipated and inappropriate complications caused by a defective product, because that's an area that I was working on one of those cases this morning, and it's really difficult. It's bad enough to go through surgery of that magnitude, and then when you find out that the product that they put in there is defective and they have to go back in and take it out, it's a daunting thing. It affects obviously your income earning capacity, and I just, a lot of people may not be aware of that, and so to the extent that someone may have that, they need to get it checked out by their doctor, and if they think there's a problem, they need to consult with someone who's handling a case of that nature.
So if you have a client come into you with a case like that, and there's already a trial happening for somebody with a similar case,
right,
do you wait to see the outcome of the other trial?
No. What happens is it's in multi-district litigation, like is what usually happens in what is called mass tort cases, where you have a product that has affected thousands of people. Vioxx was one of them.
Okay.
Baycol was another one that was a cholesterol drug that caused severe complications that the company allegedly and ultimately settled a number of those cases on the allegation they failed to advise the doctors and the publics of the side effects and so forth. Those are called mass tort cases, and we work with other lawyers around the state and around the country. This particular case is in Indiana. Because that's where the manufacturer is located, and there are cases from all over the United States that have been compiled together in a multi-district litigation case, and a federal judge is then assigned, the MDL judge, to oversee and handle all those cases. So no, you don't want to, and they are statute of limitations issues that can be very critical.
Now, you used the word tort, so I need to be educated. And part two to my question really stems from listeners who have often referred to tort reform. What is tort, and what is tort reform?
Well, tort is a civil cause of action. The most common one is negligence. A tort is an injury that someone suffers as a result of another party's failure to do what they should have done as a reasonably prudent individual, or doing something but doing it in a manner that is not appropriate according to a reasonably prudent standard.
Okay.
And as a result of that, it caused injuries and damages, and the individual suffered damages as a result of it. That's the classic example of a tort.
So you slip on a floor.
There can be other torts other than slip on a floor, trip on a sidewalk, someone hits you. That's an intentional tort. A negligent tort is someone accidentally ran a red light and hit you and hurt you. Okay, that's a negligent tort. Someone got mad at you and came in and hit you, and that's an intentional tort. You can sue for both of those.
Okay, and we'll continue that.
Okay.
But first, you have a phone call coming in. Looks like more than one. Good morning. You're on the air. I think they disappeared. Oh, they're there again. Okay, I think. Good morning. You're on the air.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Fuller and
Good morning.
Larry.
Hey, Hugh.
Last week, I read in the local paper here, I think it was a local case, I'm not sure, but anyways, the lawyer argued that an improper number of jurors, 6, not 12, heard the case, and that her client's opportunity for equality was halved since the panel consisted of only 6 jurors. I was always under the impression that a jury trial was always 12 jurors. Can you explain this for us?
Yes. In state court, a jury trial is not always 12 jurors. In fact, the majority of jury trials in state court are 6-member juries, both in the civil and in the criminal side of our judicial system. A 12-man jury is impaneled when it is a capital felony, when the like murder, first-degree murder, where you could be put to death. That requires a 12-man jury. If it is a condemnation case where the government is taking your property, then you may not want them to take it, but they have a right to condemn it and take it, but they have to pay you fair value for all your damages, not only for the taking of the property, but the damages to the remainder that wasn't taken and any business damages that resulted from it. You're entitled to a 12-man jury to determine what your damages are. And I'm sure there's some others that I'm just not thinking of off the top of my head where you could have a 12-man jury. In some cases, and I'm not really sure why, but the lawyers for the parties, with the parties' consent, will agree to waive their right to a 12-man jury and to proceed with a 6-man jury. If both parties knowingly waive that, principally in a criminal case, the defendant would have to knowingly waive that right, and it would have to be, the judge would have to make inquiry and make findings of fact on the record that this was done with advice of counsel, knowingly, willfully, without duress, all of those things. Then I am aware of some limited things where people who have the right to a 12-man jury waive that and proceed with a 6-man jury. I know nothing about the case that you talked about last week. I don't know how how they got a 6-man jury. Whether or not they were entitled to a 12-man jury or not is another question. But if you were entitled to a 12-man jury and you ended up with a 6-man person jury, I honestly can't imagine how that happened without there being a knowing waiver on the record. But again, I know nothing about that case, but 90+% of all cases that are tried in state court are 6-person juries.
Okay. Did you have a follow-up? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Is there ever a possibility that you go up in court and you don't want to have a jury, you just want the judge to make the decision? Can you do that?
Yes, you can. You know, at the time at the time you file your civil complaint, if you are suing somebody, or if you are a individual citizen charged with a crime, at the time you enter your plea of not guilty, you are asked, do you want a jury trial or a non-jury trial? When you file your complaint in a civil case, you must put in the complaint in writing that you want a jury trial. Otherwise, you waive that and you do not have a jury trial, but your case is decided by the judge.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Thanks for calling. Always a pleasure to hear from you.
Guess I don't know which would be preferable. You think with the 12-man jury, if you had that choice, you have at least one opportunity for somebody to disagree.
Yeah, I'm a big fan and a big proponent of the jury system. It's not perfect. Certainly, it has its flaws and subject to criticisms because, like anything else that's made up of by human beings with the frailties of human nature, it's not perfect. Right. But I think that on whole, having your disputes and issues resolved by a jury of your peers has proven over the years to be the best system devised.
Let me just remind our listeners, if you'd like to speak to John right now, go ahead and call in. The number is 622-9622. That is the WOCA Climate Control Source Hotline, 622-WOCA. And if you're wondering if you're listening to a live show, if you just tuned in, today's Wednesday, April 16th, 2014. Yesterday was tax day.
Amen. Yes, it was. Everybody was, all my accountant friends were walking around sleep deprived and looking very, very fatigued. So I hope they are all sleeping late and resting up today because they really put in a lot of long hours, and that's their season. Kind of like my friends who are in retail work prodigious hours between Thanksgiving and the Christmas holiday, and they always look sleep deprived and exhausted. Yes, I suspect if a person was trying to contact a certified public accountant today, it would be very difficult to find one in their office today.
Take a day off today,
and deservedly so. They earned a day off.
So when is your busy season? When's the busy season?
It really doesn't have a rhyme or reason. I've thought about that, tried to discern some type of pattern, and I've never really been able to. I haven't spent a lot of time looking at statistics or analyzing it with any degree of sophistication, but just in thinking about it, it really, there is no rhyme or reason. I can have a big case that will take just an untold amount of time, and that case, you'll work 70, 80 hours a week, sometimes more, when you're getting ready for and in trial in that case. And then other times it will be less busy because, I think that it's fair to say that over the holidays in December, things usually quiet down because people prefer to think about other things involved in their life and with their families than to think about litigation, which usually, unfortunately, involves some degree of unpleasantness. Someone with an injury, the loss of a loved one, the dissolution of a marriage, the pending of a criminal case in which one's liberty may be at stake. All of those things are very, very critical events in a person's life, and I think I think most lawyers who do litigation, it's different for people who do real estate and probate maybe, but for those of us who spend our lives in the courtroom, I think probably the end of December. Most people would rather try as best they can, even in difficult times, to turn their thoughts to something a little more pleasant and joyous than to think about a legal problem. And I think it's probably true in medicine, but the doctors, and I do represent a lot of people in the medical field, they're very busy at that time because everybody wants to take advantage of their insurance coverage because they've met their deductible, so they always go in for their elective surgery, and all my friends and clients who are surgeons usually work prodigious amount of hours at the end of the year because everybody who's been waiting all year to hit their deductible now want to come in and have their elective surgery done.
Oh, no. We do have another phone call coming in, and good morning. You're on the air with John Fuller.
Yes, sir. I have a piece of property. I would like to let somebody have an acre of it. I got 2 houses on it, and I went to the zoning people, and they said that I couldn't put another house on that property because of agriculture.
Okay. What I would recommend that you do is you call a lawyer who specializes in real estate, because you're going to need somebody to look at the zoning, look at the description, and handle that. There's nothing that I could tell you over a radio show, but I would tell you to call a real estate lawyer, someone who specializes in real estate. Make an appointment, take in your deed, your map, your survey, what have you, and let them help you with it.
All right.
Thank you for calling. Larry, there's one thing I want to do before we lose track of time, and I don't know how many minutes we have left.
About three.
3? Okay,
Yes,
here
sir.
it goes. Can't take any more phone calls today. Last week, we lost one of Ocala's greatest native sons and finest lawyers. His name was Ben Daniel Jr.
Okay.
Ben was 89 years old. He'd practiced law 50 years. He was my friend. He was my mentor. He was the essence of what a fine trial lawyer ought to be, and he was always, without fail, a consummate gentleman. He was a part of the greatest generation. He was in the Army Air Corps. He flew B-25s and B-17s as about a 16 or 17 or 18-year-old young man.
Wow.
In World War II. He stayed in the Army Air Corps. It became the Air Force. He flew combat in Korea. When he went over to take the P-51 Mustang to give to the Philippine National Guard, and the North Koreans invaded South Korea, they were the only assets the American government had to fly close ground support, and he was down on the deck providing our troops close ground support.
Wow.
With an aircraft that was designed to fly at 35,000 feet with an oil cooler that was hanging off the bottom of it, that with a .22 rifle you could basically disable that aircraft. And he did it over and over again. He retired from the military, stayed in the reserves, became a major, had 5 kids, came to Ocala, practiced law, was on Ocala City Council, was an absolute master in the courtroom, was a master negotiator. I owe him a lot.
I could hear it in your voice, John.
God bless you.
Tell me his name again.
Ben Daniel Jr.
All right. Well, thank you, John, for that. I know that was important to you, obviously. And if you would like to call John to discuss your legal circumstances, I can give you a number, or do you want to give it?
Our office number is 352-547-4292. Our toll-free number is 855-534-2565. We have offices in Ocala and the Villages, and if we can help you, we would do our best. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Obviously, one great man led to another great man in the case you just told us about. We'll take a little break. Call us if you need John's number repeated over the phone. We'll be glad to do that for you. We'll be right back.
You're listening to WOCA News Talk 1370, Ocala's source for what's happening in today's hottest, up-to-date news and topics.
Fox News